Good morning. Welcome to First Parish in Framingham. I'm Greg Wells, and I'm a member of the Board of Assessors. My pronouns are he and him. First Parish is a welcoming congregation. Whoever you are, whomever you love, wherever you are on life's journey, you are welcome here. We celebrate and welcome people of all ages, races, gender identities, sexual orientations, abilities, socioeconomic statuses, or beliefs. We welcome you here in the meeting house or on Zoom or wherever and whenever you are maybe watching this sometime in the future. Unitarian Universalism is a liberal faith that honors wisdom from many sources. We keep our minds open. Excuse me. We keep our minds open to the religious questions people have pondered across the vast times and places. Please be sure to read the announcements in the order of service. First Parish is a busy place this spring. Immediately following worship, you are invited to join us at coffee hour in Scott Hall, right across the courtyard. While we encourage you to wear masks when inside First Parish buildings, this is the first weeks that masks are now optional. There is a mask required section in the back of the sanctuary. Please take a moment to turn off your phone and other devices to their quietest setting. While beeps and buzzes may be distracting, we welcome human noises, cooing, babbling, laughter, and all. We especially love the sound of your singing, so please join in. Since 1701, people have gathered at this community to rest and recharge, to be challenged and affirmed. Those people are like you. You belong here, maybe only for the next hour, but we hope for longer. We're happy that you have joined us. I now invite you to take a breath in and out. Continue to take a few more deep breaths and to begin to release whatever you need to let go of to be more fully present to yourselves, one another, in the sacred of this time and place. The flame within the chalice is the primary symbol of the Unitarian Universalist faith tradition. To symbolize the light of reason, the warmth of community, and the flame of hope, it is our tradition to begin our worship by kindling the flame in our chalice. Please rise in spirit and body to sing hymn number 207. Earth was given as a garden, found in your gray hymn. standing as we join our voices in both our sung and spoken affirmation. The ladies are in your honor of service.
Good morning. My name is Lauren Strauss. I'm the Director of Religious Exploration here at First Parish. I use she, her pronouns, and Ben reminded me that I haven't done this in a while. I'd like us to say in American Sign Language, good morning and welcome to church. This story is one that I wrote talking about something that happened last fall in one of our RE classes. Once upon a time, and it's called Compost. Once upon a time, last November, the church school went down to the space that we use on the nutting path, and before we even had a chance to light our chalice, we found something. Does anybody remember what we found, Bridget? A dead bird. Yeah. So it looked like a female goldfinch, and there was no indication of how she died. She was perfect and lovely and soft and just peacefully lying there. So, although I had a lesson planned that day based on whatever it was that Reverend Aaron was preaching in church, I quickly realized that the bird was going to be our lesson. My friend, Reverend Gregory Caro Boyd, who's a minister at our Honolulu congregation, calls this, sometimes there's a sunset. Because one time at Ferry Beach, he had this whole lovely evening service planned, and then the sun set in the most glorious, amazing, astounding way, and everyone went to look at it, and sometimes the world just demands your attention. That Sunday, there was a dead bird, and she demanded our attention. We did some things to honor her spirit, her wee tiny spark of individuality that had already left her body. We named her, do you remember? I had to look it up. No, okay. So we named her Dawn Goldfinch, and we talked to her, and we sang a song for her to say goodbye. But we also did some things to honor her body. Bridget, do you want to help with this? Because you're like the only one here who was there that day. It's okay if you don't. I have a list. All right, so the first thing we did was we got gloves and a plastic bag to pick her up. Because we really wanted to be respectful of her and also careful of our own bodies. We found a good place for her grave. We dug a hole. We put her in the hole. We took pictures of her. We laid a plank over her as a marker and used chalk to mark it. And we put up some warning cones around it so that the preschoolers wouldn't accidentally unearth her. And then we left a note about her for the preschool. Okay, so we buried her body, we marked the grave. So we put her in a plastic bag to pick her up. Did we bury her in the plastic bag? We didn't. Why not? Because plastic lasts forever, but allowing her to be in the ground without it means that her body will decompose and return to the earth. She will provide nutrients for the tree we buried her under. She will make the soil richer. She will feed the decomposers like worms and other bugs that kept the soil rich. She became compost. If we'd left her in that plastic bag, she would not have fed the soil. We put her in the ground in the most natural way possible so she could continue to support life on our planet as part of a cycle of life in her own tiny way. It was one more way to honor her and to live into our values as Unitarian Universalists. Thank you. And now, if you would all sing us to RE, we will see you later.
Good morning. I'm the Reverend Aaron Stockwell Wiseman. I use he, him pronouns. Of course, it is my honor to serve as your senior minister. In our community, there is great joy and there is also great sorrow. We set aside this time because we know that the sharing of our personal joys can be joy expanded, and the sharing of our personal sorrows can feel as though someone is lifting a burden. Remember that you can always share your joys or sorrows in the book that is at the back of the sanctuary. It looks like this. It is always open for you to share, or you can submit them online each week. Of course, we intersperse with our sharing the singing of hymn 1002, Comfort Me. We sing together to lift up our joys and sorrows, but also so that you might have a song ready whenever you need comfort. I share these sorrows of the people of our congregation. Judy L. writes that her sister-in-law Patty died very suddenly from cancer on Tuesday. Sarah M.N. writes, I'm thinking of all the trans people in Montana, where a trans representative was silenced for speaking the truth about the impacts of anti-trans bills, and the governor who just made that into law. My son's cousin lives in Helena, Montana, and just had the courage to come out as a trans youth this year. I am heartbroken for him and his family. I share this from a member of our congregation who writes, my friend Jessica is torn between a healthy, respectful, and honorable lifestyle or life marked by good versus dishonorable behavior. I hope she will choose the path that is best for her daughters. This too from a member of our congregation. I pray for peace for Ukraine after a brutal attack over the weekend that hit an apartment building and ended the life of at least 23 people. Let us now sing the first verse. The lyric is Comfort Me. now lift up the joys of our congregation. Marianne O. and Daryl H. Wright, we celebrated our transplant anniversary by sharing our story at a donor awareness celebration at Beth Israel Deaconess Hospital this week. We will now sing the second verse, Sing With Me. And as always, we light one final candle for the joys and the sorrows which remain too great to share. Let us now sing, Speak For Me. We now return to our comfortable breath in and out. We notice the ground beneath us. We feel our connection to that earth. We feel our connection to the people sitting to our left and our right. Feel connected to this place of warmth and welcome. Spirit of life and love, named and unnamed, but who calls us each by our true first name, which is beloved. Give thanks for this community, for people who are so generous with the time spent in this community and other examples of deep and beautiful generosity. We know too that there are those in our midst who are ill, who are lonely, who are mourning the loss of a loved one, who are wrestling with the questions that people have wrestled with for generations. May we have the courage to reach out and lend a helping hand. We know too that there is turmoil in our country and in the world abroad. We know that justice is what love looks like in public, so let us be emboldened to love courageously, to work to bend the moral arc of the universe towards justice, which does not move by the mystery alone, it moves by our hands and our work. And from time to time, we slip up and trip up with our words. We say things without thought. We distance ourselves from those around us, from the mystery of our understanding, and from our authentic selves. And this can trouble us. And because we are still breathing, we have the chance to move once again into right relationship. We have the chance to say, I'm sorry. How can I do better? May all that is holy hear these words. Let us now sit in the quiet of this house so that you can rest, so that you can listen, so you can pray the prayers of your own hearts, or perhaps so you can simply do absolutely nothing. You have the permission to do that. I'll keep track of the time. May it be so, and amen.
This morning's offering words were written by Eric Walker Wickstrom. As we prepare to take this morning's offering, may each of us look not just in our wallet or our checkbooks to see how much we have with us, but let us look into our heart as well and see what is available there. How much love, how much generosity, how much faith, how much gratitude, how much hope. And let us take our offerings from this account. If this is your first time joining us, you're invited to let the offering pass you by. The offering can all be joyfully given and gratefully received. The Facts of Life by Padraig O. Tuma. That you were born and you will die. That you will sometimes love enough and sometimes not. that you will lie if only to yourself, that you will get tired, that you will learn most from situations you did not choose, that there will be some things that move you more than you can stay, that you will love, that you must be loved, that you will avoid questions that most urgently need your attention, that you began as the fusion of a sperm and an egg of two people who once were strangers and may still well be. That life isn't fair, that life is sometimes good and sometimes better than good, that life is often not so good, that life is real, and if you survive it, well, survive it well, with love, with art, with meaning given where meaning is scarce. That you will learn to live with regret, that you will learn to live with respect. That the structures that constrict you may not be permanently constricted. That you will probably be okay. That you must accept change before you die, but you will die anyways. So you might as well live, and you might as well love. You might as well love. You might as well love.
The facts of life. That you were born and you will die, that sometimes you will love enough and sometimes not, that you will lie if only to yourself, that you will get tired, that you will learn most from the situations you did not choose, that there will be some things that move you more than you can say, that you will live, that you must be loved, that you will avoid questions most urgently in need of your attention, that you began as the fusion of a sperm and an egg of two people who were once strangers and may well still be, that life isn't fair, that life is sometimes good and sometimes better than good, that life is often not so good, that life is real, and if you survive it well with love and art and meaning given when meaning is scarce. That you will learn to live with regret, that you will learn to live with respect, that the structures that constrict you may not be permanently constricting, that you will probably be okay, that you must accept change before you die, but you will die anyway. So you might as well live, you might as well love, you might as well love, you might as well love. There are two things I know for certain that apply to everyone in this room. You were born, and someday you will die. Some have said that the balancing of these two facts is the reason why religion exists. So today I'm talking about something that will impact what happens after the day you die. And as always, if this causes things to well up in you and you need to get out of this space, I respect that. That is a good thing when people realize those emotions. So if you need to leave at some point, because we're talking about death today, you have my permission and my blessing. This is the final-ish sermon in a series of sermons this year on more prophetic issues. We've touched on reproductive justice, strengthening democracy, and in general, what the prophethood of all believers means. When I say prophetic witness, I mean what James Luther Adams said when he said that the prophetic liberal church is not a church in which the prophetic function is only assigned to a few. Rather, in the prophetic liberal church, it is the church in which people think and work together to interpret the signs of the times in light of their faith, to explicit through discussion the epical thinking that the times demand. Adam's prophethood of all is different from the traditional definition of prophetic witness. Traditionally, the prophets couldn't go to school to learn the ways and wisdom to be prophetic. Indeed, I don't think I could write a how-to guide about how to be prophetic. The prophets of old had fire in their mouths, and they didn't need to read a manual. There was nothing they could do but speak. The prophets of old had optimism, and they had imagination. They were not pessimistic, though maybe they were realistic or optimistic. There's that gap that they imagined between the world as it is and the world as it should be, and they found that gap to be heartbreaking. So we're talking about green burial and ways to make more environmentally friendly choices. And this is very slightly prophetic, I think. This is like a small way of being prophetic. But it is also about seeing that another way is possible. It is about one way of connecting to the earth in death, and we should not miss the opportunity to connect to the earth in this life while we still have the chance. And we should also advocate for greener ways before our death. So we're talking about green burial and more environmentally friendly ways of death care. This is a way that we live into our values, or rather that we die into our values. I will say this: greening our burial practices and advocating for these more environmentally friendly methods, they will do a lot. But the overall impact of these changes is just a drop in the bucket when it comes to climate change. The history of what we do with human remains currently dates back to, well, just after the first human died, of course. But the funeral home industry as it exists today, I think, can be traced to around the time of the Civil War, which is one of the first times that we had a massive number of people dying far from home, and that their families wanted them to be buried closer to home. This is when embalming became popular in the United States as a way to preserve remains for the final religious rites of passage. Before that, what we now call green burial was known as just burial. Embalming still remains a mainly American practice. And I should say this: the practice of embalming and using metal caskets and concrete vaults is a Protestant and perhaps Catholic tradition. It's not true of all of the world's religions. They don't require this. In fact, none of the world's religions require that you be embalmed. Jewish burial practices require that no embalming is done, and wooden caskets are largely used. Shrouds are used in Muslim burials as well. Burial has to happen quickly. What is true about the most current popular methods of burying and cremating is that they pollute. According to the book Eco-Piety, which I've only read one chapter of, the chapter that was most relevant for today, but it's by Sarah McFarland Taylor, we learn that each year American consumers purchase and then proceed to bury 20 million feet of hardwood, 4.3 million gallons of toxic embalming fluid, 1.6 miles of reinforced concrete for vaults, 17,000 tons of copper and bronze for casket ornamentation, and 64,500 tons of steel that we put right into the ground. While cremation does save space, it is not as green as full-body green burial either. The average cremation uses 28 gallons of petroleum gas to fully cremate a body. And of course, as Taylor points out, pollution emitted from crematoria can also release lead, mercury, and other toxic substances, making them airborne. Now, after hearing all of this and knowing your own practices, I do not want to shame anyone for the choices that they have made or might be making for themselves or loved ones. I want you to be a thoughtful consumer, though. I want you to be a thoughtful consumer of the one thing that we all consume in our lives or that consumes us all in the end. These choices that we make are proxies for love. And there is an industry, the funeral industry or the funeral industrial complex, depending on who you're reading, that say that spending large sums of money on funeral preparations is one way of showing love. And that could be true. One writer, though, Lisa Carlson, presents a different option. She says, I want to make clear that when I die, I want the absolutely least expensive funeral you can possibly arrange. I don't want some funeral director telling you that you ought to have spent the best for your mother. If you want to spend money to show how much you love me, for goodness sake, do it while I am alive. That said, the funeral directors in Framingham that I have worked with so far in this congregation are kind and decent people that I am glad you get to work with during the worst days of someone's life. I want to simply expand your thinking going forward. You do have a choice. And it would be wonderful if you had more choice as well. There are two other methods that are currently a possibility in some states in the Union: aquamation, or alkaline hydrolysis, and natural organic reduction, or a little bit crudely referred to as human composting, are two other options that are out there. Aquamation, or alkaline hydrolysis, involves, according to the Cremation Association of North America, which does have a website, of course, it involves a process of water, alkaline chemicals, heat, and sometimes pressure and agitation to accelerate natural decomposition, leaving bone fragments. The decomposition that occurs in alkaline hydrolysis is actually the same that occurs during burial, just sped up quite a bit. It is said to be about 90% more efficient than standard cremation. Archbishop Desmond Tutu famously requested that his remains undergo alkaline hydrolysis after death. He was adamant about defending the planet in life, and so he worked to continue that in death. Aquamation, or alkaline hydrolysis, is currently legal in 28 states, though not all states have funeral service providers to use that. Natural organic reduction is a process that uses large tanks to hold human remains with straw, wood chips, and other natural materials for a period of about 4 to 6 weeks. The remains and organic materials are mixed together with warm air, much like composting regularly. And this is currently available in 6 different states. As I said, these options are currently not legal in Massachusetts. However, there are bills that are currently alive in this legislative session. I have made our state representatives aware that I think this is a moral issue, that our faith has something to say about it. Jack Patrick Lewis was an early co-sponsor of the current House bill and has even connected me with other clergy who are interested in this. So if you're represented by Representative Lewis, thank him. Our other state representatives in the First Parish area seemed supportive as well when I reached out to them. This is one piece of legislation, and I don't often speak directly to legislators about issues, but this is one that I feel is so deeply connected to our Unitarian Universalist values. How else do we work to affirm and promote the interdependent web of all existence, of which we are a part? Green burial, of course, is an option. Even here in Edgell Grove Cemetery, where many First Parishioners rest eternally or plan to. And in both, as I said, alkaline hydrolysis and natural organic reduction, bodies undergo the same process of what happens in green burial, just much faster. Green burials do 2 things. They pollute less, and they allow the body to return to the earth, and they also ensure that the land that they're on stays in a largely undeveloped state. The rules around disturbing a cemetery and moving caskets are challenging. They require a lot of input from the people and the families of those who are buried there. I could imagine renegade burial societies forming as a way to preserve huge tracts of undeveloped land. Again, in eco-piety, we hear in open land conservation efforts, buried green bodies have also begun to be used as a strategic way to ward off big box strip malls and condo developers. Once human remains are lawfully interred on a property, the legalities and family permissions required to move them, robbing them of their eternal rest, are hairy, to say the least, and can thwart even the most determined of developers, or at least slow them down. There's also a more mystical element to it. As they imagine their bodies in the ground, several express a real delight as they relate the strange warmth that they feel when they're envisioning a kind of mystical unity in which they will one day become one with the earth. Said later on in the same book, a mystical return to a welcoming planetary whole. Of course, because green burial is not the norm, our societies have become ordered around embalming and other methods, more invasive burial. I've not had the opportunity to officiate at a graveside green burial service in my time in ministry, but my colleagues have. They describe the experience as very powerful. The cemeteries look different. In some cases, they just look like parks. And in other times, they're just outside of developed cemeteries. One of my colleagues said that when a congregant of theirs died, everything had to be dropped to attend to the death. She described it as inconvenient but beautiful. She wondered if every one of her congregants chose green burial at the end of their life, how chaotic her ministry and the ministry of her church might be. One thing for sure, it's interesting to imagine what needs to change to allow this to happen. One thing's for sure, I think we'd see bereavement leave policies a lot more generous, because I think death ought to inconvenience us. A reorientation to green burial might also mean that we aren't traveling that far away from where we wish to be buried. We would need to live close to huge tracts of land. In Vermont, state laws were changed that originally required bodies to be buried 5 feet below the ground. It moved it up to 3.5 feet, because any lower than that and the nutrients that are in bodies don't actually impact the earth and the ecosystem above. And of course, usually caskets and containers for green burials aren't kept at home, funeral homes on hand at home, and aren't kept on hand at funeral homes. So perhaps the woodworkers of congregations might have to get skilled at making containers when they are needed. You can order them online, sure, but imagine the rush delivery fees and the costs on that. And since you can't use nails or screws most of the time, we need to get comfortable again with making dovetail joints. We need people to sew shrouds as well. For those who don't have families close by, we need members of our congregation comfortable with preparing the dead. I think all of this would mean that we would befriend death. In green burials, some express a transformative experience of those who, rather than outsourcing to impersonal professionals, the intimate acts of care for the dead, looking death straight in the face and tending directly to their loved ones' bodies by washing, dressing, combing hair, and arranging the body for burial, and physically participating in lowering their loved ones into the ground. And this is all one of the many facets of what has been called online the death positive movement. But, and while it might seem morbid to discuss, whenever I engage with this movement of death positivity, I come away feeling a little bit more in touch with the positive things in life. I feel a little bit more alive. Yes, it does make me sad to consider the death of loved ones and the feelings of my loved ones when I die, of course. As William Irvine writes about the Stoics, they contemplated death not because they were obsessed with it, but because they longed to get the most out of life. Death is a return to that old brown earth. It is a reuniting of the body to the earth. When we die, the carbon that returns to the earth feeds the trees and the grass. Personally, I don't want to be pumped full of chemicals. My face caked with makeup. I never wore much makeup in this life anyways. Why bury me like that? I don't want people to say, well, he looks well. Or just like I did when I'm alive, because I'm not. I want people to acknowledge death, to mourn, to shed a tear or two, sing a song or two. Call it a celebration of life. Works for some, but not for me. I hope that I celebrate life at every one of my birthdays and every sunset and sunrise I see. Society doesn't know, I think, how to handle sadness. I don't want to be buried in a metal casket, but in a green cemetery. If it can be the woods, that's great. If I die of a disease, I don't want it said that I battled it. My peace-loving credentials are pretty solid. A woman at my church in Groton that I grew up in made sure that when she died from cancer, the obituary said that she danced with cancer. I'm not much of a dancer, people know that about me, but that metaphor works for me as well. My friends gathered here, we each choose how to live our life in accordance with our values. We each can also choose how to carry out our values in death. Let us choose wisely and well. May it be so, and amen. So we're going to sing a song. It's a good song. It is, and I always like sharing this, it's one of the only hymns in our hymnal that comes from a work of science fiction. It's from a Robert Heinlein short story, and it was originally written about an astronaut who was in space who wanted to return home to die there, to see one more landing on the hills that gave us birth. Let us turn our eyes to the fleecy skies and these blue-green hills of earth. So let us rise in body or spirit to sing 163, For the Earth Forever Turning. So as we leave this friendly place, going out into that blue-green world, let us take the light of love out to the world and use it to brighten our pathways. And when we need to rest or recharge, be challenged or affirmed, may that light guide us safely home. May we hold the light always, and the light hold us always.